Can I kill this mosquito on your...
Did I get it?
No, it's still there.
Is it still there? You can kill it.
It's flying.
You could try to kill it.
I killed one earlier, I
You
promise.
should get that one.
Get away.
All right. Anyway, everybody, welcome. I was about to say welcome back, but no, welcome to episode 1 of
The Worthy Podcast.
So we didn't even rehearse that beforehand.
Hey.
That wasn't bad. That
here
was
we
pretty
go.
good. So today we're going to be talking about a recent sermon that I did. Was that, last Wednesday?
It was last Wednesday.
Yeah, so just a few days ago, I gave a sermon, and we're going to kind of be recapping it, talking about it, giving some behind the scenes, giving some takeaways. And the best part about it, if you've already seen the sermon, that's okay, because we're also going to be getting some divine takeaways.
Divine takeaways and
from
getting
Divinity.
deeper with Jared.
Yeah.
Deeper
I
in
like
Jared's
that.
thoughts.
Deeper in Jared.
Love doing that.
Anyway, hi, my name is Jared, in case you didn't know, and to my left, y'all's right, is
Divinity.
Hi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
happy to be
Welcome to
doing
my
this.
car.
This is our little film studio for
I
today.
love this car.
As the sun sets and we can see the moon,
I can see the moon.
we're going to be filming a podcast, and we'll see how quickly it gets dark. So, anyway, I say that we just hop right in.
All right.
I say we just go for it.
Go for the notes.
Let's
Well,
go for the notes.
Jared first started off with starting a very, very strong introduction. And one thing that you stated was, I need you and I need God to carry me through. And that was just something that really stuck out to me, because I know a lot of times where I needed God and sometimes I didn't go straight to him for it. And it wasn't, that was not the best option. Probably should have went straight towards him, and I think you dive deeper at that point in a second of starting off going first to God.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then it tends to create a lot of conflicts, storms in your life, just a lot.
Well, I think the story that I shared, it wasn't exactly me immediately going to God. I think that it was a very deep and personal story where it was just like, hey, it was a really difficult time in my life and I was going through a rough season. And that season was actually probably like a few months. It was a pretty long time. And it wasn't like something bad happened and I immediately just started going to God. It was more like something bad happened and I sat in it for like a really long time. And I kind of came to a point where it was like the end of myself, or like the end of my rope, or I was like beyond the straw that broke the camel's back. They had a few more after that one. And eventually it got to a point where I was just like, I don't think I can do this anymore, which means I need something outside of myself. And so it wasn't necessarily my first response just to go to God, although that would be great if it was. It wasn't. There was a lot of pain that kind of led me to that point. But eventually I went to God, and that was the first step of getting out of that situation, I would say. So.
And another point that you had there was like lost hope, and then you finally went back to God saying, Lord, I'm giving it to you. But I really resonated with that statement of just losing hope, because like this summer, actually, this is like part of my testimony, was a point in my life where I was doing great things with God. I was going to church camp, and it was my last church camp that I was able to attend as a camper. But I also went to middle school camp, becoming like a CIT, and able to serve middle schoolers there. And so I was doing a lot of things with God and a lot of works for God. And I think the devil just really attacked me in that moment. And God put me through some storms that I won't get too deep into, but some storms in my life that really made me lose hope for a good bit. And it was like the lowest point in my life. And if you know anything about losing a family member or getting injured or like losing friends in a way, then you know what I'm talking about, of how it kind of just sucks, But all three of those things happened like the same time, and it was all crazy. To the point where, I did lose hope for sometimes. But I was able to come back up on top of that with people like encouraging me and sending me sermons and devotions. But it took time to get back to where I am with God now. But during that season where I had to take a break and just step back and be like, okay, God, I do need you in this time. That was when I truly sought out God, and I heard from him, and he listened to me, and he was able to just speak to me in a way like no other. And he gave me like a new perspective on life and how things work. And now I can say that that storm that I went through actually is something I can share with others, and it helps them, be able to come back to hope like I did. So I was going to read a Bible verse that really helped me with that hope, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay. It's Romans 5:1-11. It says, "Therefore, since we have been made right in God's sight by faith, we have peace with God because of what Jesus Christ our Lord has done for us. Because of our faith, Jesus Christ has brought us into this place of undeserved privilege, where we now stand, and we look confidently and joyfully look forward to sharing God's glory. We're going to rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know that helps us develop endurance, and endurance develops faith. And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation." So let me just read that part again. It says, "And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation." So in that season of feeling like hopeless, God gave me the strength and endurance to carry on once I ran back to him. But if I was away from that, I didn't have the strength. But fully recognizing that I needed God in that moment, he gave me the strength to persevere, even though things was so hard at that time in my life.
I think one word that you keep saying is the word hope. And I think, I mentioned that a few times in the sermon.
You did.
And one thing that I was actually thinking about last night was that for me, at least, sometimes I've dealt with some kinds of anxiety. A lot of it dealing with like the future and just like not knowing what's going to happen and different things like that. And I was just processing through last night, and the anxiety comes from when you think about the future and you think about the worst possible outcome or like a bad outcome.
Yeah.
And then I thought of the definition of hope, which is when you think of the future, and when you think of the future, what you think of is an outcome that's better than where you are now. That there's hope, that there's something better at the horizon, that you look over the trees and maybe the sun is going to come up sometime soon. And so I realized that there can be no anxiety in the presence of hope.
Mm-hmm.
There can be no anxiety in the presence of God. Because if you really trust in God, then you trust that he has a plan for you, and that plan is going to end with you starting down here and ending up here. Mm-hmm. And that's not some kind of prosperity gospel message. What I'm saying is that what you get is God. That's the reward. That's what's up here. And so, I just thought it was interesting that the opposite of anxiety, the cure, you could say, for anxiety is hope. And I think there's only one true place to find that. In God.
Yeah. That's a great point.
So
I'll go back to my notes.
Sure.
All right. You talked a lot about Jeroboam in the Old Testament and
Jared Baldwin?
No, Jeroboam, which does sound like Jared Baldwin.
It does sound a little bit like Jared Baldwin.
It really fast. Yeah.
Jared Baldwin. Jeroboam.
Jared Baldwin. Yeah, I can't even say it because tongue twister. Yeah. All throughout this, like, God asked for him to follow his commands. And he was going to become king. Sorry, not queen. That would be weird. King. Anyways. And you said that God had something planned for him, and he has something planned for us. But that word "but" really gets us
Mm,
a lot of times.
it's a big butt.
Okay, but
I'm just trying to throw you off. That's all.
that was a big. Yeah, I'm like, who? What? Okay, Jeroboam. There, that's the answer. No, not you. Sorry.
Continue.
Okay, God has something planned for you, but you have to follow His commandments, and you have to follow and obey His commands, so that you can pursue your calling of what God tells you to do. And I thought that was like really, really, really good what you put there. And following His commands is like a position of worship and obedience to God. Right? Okay, these mosquitoes.
If you see our hands swatting, we're swat.
I'm about to like clamp it with the.
We're just gonna close this, and you can see us from the little peephole at the top.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, I think because what I looked at a few different callings of kings in the Bible, but then you also have callings in the New Testament. And actually, this would be a great study for anyone that wants to do it, is look at the moment when God calls someone to do something. When they call them to go preach to a different nation, when they call them to be a disciple, when they call to be a prophet, when they're called to be a king or a judge or a prophet. I said that one already.
You did say a prophet.
Anyway,
It's okay.
when God calls someone to a position, one thing, and it's not in all of them, but it's in a lot of them, it's a little caveat that says, hey, here's what I'm going to do that God says. Next, here's what I want you to do. And so I think my favorite one, because I kept saying, like, He's not calling us to this, He's calling us to this. And I think my favorite one is He's putting him in a position of authority, but He's calling him to a position of obedience and worship. And so I think that, like, the practical application there is, like, I want to be a pastor. And like we always say, like, I have a call to ministry. I think my calling is to just follow God. My calling is to be obedient to Him. My call is nothing internal, and it's not for other people. Well, it's to serve other people, but I do that in my obedience to God. That's where it stems out of. And so that's where that came from, was just realizing, like, what really is the call? Like, what am I shooting for? Am I shooting to be a great pastor? Or am I shooting to be a man of God? And at the end of the day, I'm shooting to be a man of God. Regardless of anything else. And that looks like putting what He wants above what I want and following Him in obedience to what He says. Whatever that looks like. It might not look like what I want it to look like. That's the point. That's the point. But that's the call. That's the call. So, yeah.
All right. It's going to stem from that, but I think that was good.
If you have more to add, go for it.
I was just trying to think of the verse that really resonated with that.
Was it one I said during the sermon, or is it a different one?
It was, no, it was like something I learned at church camp.
Mm.
It was talking about our callings and how we might be called to different things. And does not necessarily have to be vocational ministry, where we are called to be in a church or like working as a pastor or a children's pastor or serving in that way. But there's callings within just regular work fields where you're called to be a teacher, a surgeon, a cashier worker. Like, it could be
My calling is to be a cashier.
a cashier
Dollar
worker.
General, Walmart, I don't care. I just want to be a cashier.
Yeah.
That's it.
And within those callings,
Yeah.
you are told by God that we still have to, like, go and make disciples, even in the work field. Now, because we always hear that, oh yeah, we should go and make disciples by being a pastor, being a children's pastor, serving in the church that way, on a Sunday. But they never talk about how we should go and do our callings, when we're working throughout the week, and how we should, while we're working, hey, you heard about Jesus? Hey, do you know God loves you? Hey, you're struggling with this? Here's how I got over it. Yeah? So, like, you can express that within wherever you're at, especially where you work.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't even think about spreading their calling, or not the calling, but like God's good news at the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be within the church.
Mm-hmm.
It can be out of the church.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they hear the word evangelism, in a large part, there's just a negative connotation to it. I believe that's the right word.
There you go.
So let me not use that word, and let me say it like this. Not evangelism, but hope giving. I'm not going to someone else and trying to recruit them to some team. I'm not trying to get something from them. I want to say, hey, here's where I was, and then I found God. And what God gave me was hope, and I want to give that to you as well. One of my favorite quotes was that when I was talking about doing social media and posting on TikTok and Instagram, and an older pastor told me, hey, if we want to reach people that we haven't reached, then we need to do things that we haven't done. If we want to reach people that we haven't reached, it's not going to be the same church program that we've been running for decades now. It's not going to be the same outreach strategy that worked in the 50s. If we want to reach people that we haven't reached, we need to do things that we haven't done. If we want to reach people that we haven't reached, we need to go places where we haven't gone. And that is in the marketplace, or it's in schools, as dangerous as that can be nowadays. Yeah. But that's in schools, that's in office buildings, that's in store. If you're a cashier, you can give someone the best smile as you hand them your money and say, they'll be like, why are you smiling? Because I got hope. What I'm trying to say is wherever you go, you can be that testimony. Wherever you go, you can be that light. Wherever you go, you can give that hope. And if we want to reach those people that the church isn't reaching, then what we need to do is go outside the church.
Mm-hmm. 100% agree.
And that's on everyone.
Yeah. I think that brought up another point of when you said hope giving. People tend to look at me or others who are Christians, and they'll ask, how can you be so happy? How can you have so much joy when all these things happen to you?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just a testimony in itself. How even when we go through the deepest, darkest things that people know we go through, and we still are able to put a smile on our face, that just says something about who God is and how he can give us hope and he give us joy and things like that. So I thought that was really, really special. Is it good?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. That was good. Yeah. Sometimes the best testimony is not through words, it's just by living. But I was in a class about evangelism today, and someone said that sometimes evangelism is just a ice cold cup of water. But the professor said, that's not evangelism. That's useful, especially if someone's thirsty. But what's evangelism is when you tell them about who God is. And so, yes, it's about how we live our lives. That's how we bring them in. That's the pre-evangelism. But evangelism can't be replaced. God cannot be taken out of telling people about God.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
It's really important. Yeah. All right. Let's see.
It's getting a little dark. I don't know how it's going to
getting a
look on
little
camera.
dark.
We're going to find out
boy.
at the end. Maybe it's just not a video podcast. Maybe it's just an audio podcast because it's pitch black. And that's okay. That's cool.
More than the hope, you're like, I believe that God is real. And you say, why? Well, when I had no hope, Jesus became my hope and made a way for me. You want to share more on that?
Yeah, that one is deeply personal. I don't believe in God. Wait, don't clip that. I don't believe in God because of some like factual argument. I believe in God because of my experience with him. And I believe in God because of what I've gone through, and I wasn't alone. And so when I say that I believe in him because he gave me hope, what I really mean is that I believe in him because there was a time when I ran away from him, and it felt like I had no options, and I talk about it more in the sermon. It felt like I had no options. I didn't want to go on. But then I turned to him, and he came into my life, and he gave me a reason to go on. And I believe in him because he's my reason for still going. And yeah, and you can't take that away.
So, do you believe that things that you go through are part of God's plan to be able to express to others later down the road of like them going through the same thing, and you're able to tell them about it?
It's not a leading question at all, but no, that's a good one. There's a verse I think Paul writes. I can't remember which book, but he talks about how what was once darkness has become a light, and I think that's kind of what a testimony is what like once was darkness can now be a testimony of someone else and that becomes light. God can use that as a light because that becomes, hey, I was here where you were, but God turned my life around, and now here's where I'm at. And so you can talk to people who are at the low place that you once were and give them that next step and give them that hope that is God. And I think that's a very powerful way to communicate. One of my favorite stories in the Bible, one of my favorite lines is when Jesus healed a blind man, and the religious leaders brought him in for questioning, and they're like, who healed you? And he's like, I don't know. And they're like, is this man a sinner? And he's like, I don't know. And so they bring in the parents, and they're like, yada yada. You're like, this was your son? They're like, yes, this was our son, and he was blind, but now he can see. And they're like, how can he see? And they're like, and the parents are like, I don't know, ask him. And so they ask him, they're like, how can you see? And he responds with, whether the man that healed me was a sinner or not, I don't know. But here's what I do know. I was blind, but now I see. And everyone needs that moment. Whether God allowed this to happen or made this happen, or whether God and evil and this and whatever arguments you want to bring up, I don't know. But what I do know is once I had no hope, and God became my hope.
And I think that was the only thing you could hope for. So, from my experiences, yeah, I was trying to reach hope in other things. And it was not the right hope I was looking for until I reached out to my friends, who brought me back to God. It was like, well, have you prayed about it?
Forgot about that.
Yeah, what? Yeah, God, yeah. And so in that moment, I'm like, oh, no, not really. So my friends, being the friends that they are, brought me back to God. So in that moment, my hope was now found in God and no one else. And I think that brings up another good point of accountability partners. And
well, you and I love being vulnerable, so This is a good topic for us to be talking about.
Oh boy, yeah. Oh, accountability partners, though. I like to encourage that a lot, because you truly do need them. When you're trying to get back to God, back to the roots of Him, back to having quiet time with Him, which is really important, back to prayer time with Him, back to devotions with Him, when you have a person that you can do that right along with you, and they can ask, hey, have you read your Bible today? And you'd be like, no. And they'll be like, well, maybe you should, like encouragement like that is really special, because then you can go along with them and be like, hey, this really spoke to me in the Bible today. And then they could go back and be like, hey, well, this really spoke to me. And then you can go back and forth of what you learned about God in the Bible and how God can speak into you to be able to share to others what you learned. I think that's really important to have partners like that. Prayer warriors. I mean, it says when 2 or 3 are gathered, there the Lord will be. And when we are praying all together, then we can make something happen. Maybe we could be healed from this. Maybe God can perform a miracle in a mighty way. Maybe we can just all have this faith and a deeper connection with God. I mean, prayer is a powerful thing. And not just praying for the food to be blessed or praying before we go to bed, but praying nonstop 24/7 is a very powerful thing. What I've learned recently is how God cares for the littlest of things and the biggest of things. And I think he was speaking on that the other day or something, how when we bring our request to God, it doesn't have to be this big, extravagant request. It can be just the smallest details in our life. We're like, dear Lord, help me with this math test tomorrow because I know I studied, but I know I'm maybe not ready, but maybe not ready.
Study.
Or maybe, Lord, I didn't study and maybe we can help. Or, Lord, help me with this race coming up. I'm really scared and I know I can do well with you. You give me strength. Just help me to do this. It can be, or it could be a big thing like, Lord, please help me through this injury. I know it's been bothering me for some time. Just help me to have the strength to keep enduring the day and give it rest when I know I need to give it rest. If you didn't know, I'm a runner, and injury is just not, it's not it for a runner. It's not, hate injuries, hate being hurt, hate that I can't run.
I think you hate that you have to slow down.
Hate that I have to slow down
That's
in life.
what you don't like.
Which is why God slowed me down one time with an injury and brought me back to Him. It was like a real punishment, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, wow.
That you were brought back to Him?
No, that I was injured. Because I'm like, oh, wait, I can't run. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And through that time of not being able to run and resting, I was actually able to rest in God's presence, rest in His Word, have more time to, be in the Bible, be in prayer, talk to my friends about God, have more time to do a lot of things. And then that taught me to, establish God in my everyday life and be able to have Him at everything that I do. So now, with running, I could say, Lord, I want to run this race for you. I want this to be something that brings you glory and honor. And with my oh my goodness.
Praxis test?
Praxis test? No. With my practice.
Oh. I thought you were saying praxis.
No, I was going,
Sorry, go ahead.
elaborating on my ability to run and having God with me through it. And then He gives me the strength and endurance to run faster and harder and better. But that could be for anything in life, not just running. That can be for your job. Help me to, Lord, have you in my job. And I have these coworkers and they just don't really speak that well. And I want to try to bring them closer to you or let them get to know you or, So it could be anything. This all goes back to prayer. Sorry, that was a long tangent. But yeah. But that just goes to show that we can have God in every single aspect of our lives, and we can pray to God through every single detail, extravagant or not, give it all to Him and fully surrender to Him.
Yeah. Going back to what you originally said, God is over the big things and the little things. The way that I saw it, are there any stars out? I don't see any right now.
I see one.
You see? Well, that's the moon.
No,
but,
right there.
Oh yeah. Okay, so there's a star out. One night I was.
I think it's an airplane.
Is it moving?
Yes.
Oh, it is moving. That's totally an airplane. You were the one that pointed it out. All right, so one night I was taking a walk and it was dark, and I went to a spot where there were no lights around, so you could see the sky. And I saw a ton of stars, and God, I think, just paused me so that I could just take a second. I looked up and I realized all of those stars, they look small, but scientifically they're pretty big, right? They're pretty huge. and you can't even comprehend like how large they are. And I just thought that, and I just thought about God, and I was like, God put those there in their place. And so not only think about how big they are, but how big God has to be in order to be able to just to put those in their place. He put the stars in their place. But at the same time, you have a passage where God talks about providing, and he says, look at the sparrow. I provide for the sparrow too. And I was on a walk, and I was like, he's the God of the stars and the sparrows. Because not only did he put the stars in place, and those big things in our lives, like, are nothing compared to him. Like, the big things are nothing compared to him, but the little things are big to him, because he's not only the God of the stars, but he's also the God of the sparrows. And so even our math test that we may or may not have studied for, up to I don't know why you yell at me, but whatever we're going through in life, there's nothing too small that God says, I don't care. No, he says, do not be anxious, but with all your requests, present to God with thanksgiving. Oh man, I'm misquoting a verse. I hate when I do that. But he says, with all your requests, like there is nothing that you can say to God that he won't listen to. There's nothing too small that God doesn't care about it, because he cares for us, which means that the things that matter to us, no matter how small they may be, he still cares.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Piggyback off of that.
Go back to the stars analogy. How you said that.
Stars, by the way.
There's one. How you said that it looks so small to us, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, it's big.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that sometimes we view our problems and circumstances as this big major thing, and God's just looking down saying, divinity, that's so small to me. Like, why are we worrying about this?
You know what? I think it's going to be okay.
I got your plans established for you. I know where this is going to go. You're thinking that it's going to go the other route in the worst possible situation, where I'm thinking that it's going to be something that's going to be okay. And I think sometimes we view our circumstances and problems way too big, because we know that God is in control. And when God is in control, then any of our circumstances are not too big. And then when he said anything that we go through is not too big for God, it's really not. So this goes to show that we're going to be okay, whether we think so or not, because God is with us through it all.
I think a big testimony of that is the story of David and Goliath, because David, everyone is like, David, do you not see the giant that's standing in front of you? And like, this would have been a big dude, okay? Like, this would have been a big dude, just being real. A big dude. Right? You look at a basketball net, that's about as tall as he was. Like, about that tall.
I can strike him down.
That's a big dude. No, but everyone was looking like, David, do you not see this giant that you're up against? And David looks at all of them and says, do you not know the God that's on my side?
You not know how big my God is? Of course you don't. Let me show you. What?
Zoing, zoing, zoing. Shapa.
And then it went boing.
And the giant went boom.
Tumbling down.
Because sometimes when the problem is right in front of us, that's all we see. But if we take a step back and we look up to God, the problem disappears in comparison, because it cannot hold a candle to who God is.
Yeah, we talked about difficult seasons and how God was there, right?
Yeah.
And how God's not done with you yet. Just like elaborate on that point, because that was a big point in your sermon, and towards the end you're like, God is not done with you yet.
I think about the story of the Israelites in the wilderness, and the manna would come to them every day. I think it was in the morning. It would just show up there on the ground when they woke up. They would have to go out and collect it. Do you know what happens if they tried to collect for 2 days and then they stored it? Do you remember what happened to the manna?
It would get like spoiled, right?
Yeah, it got maggots. It was bad. You couldn't eat it.
That poor manna.
And so they walked through the wilderness for years, and every single individual day they would have to go out and collect manna. And they could never store up for the second day unless it was the Sabbath, then they could. But otherwise, they could never store up enough for the second day, which means that every single day they had to wonder, where is my next meal coming from? Every single day they could be in worry saying, like, I do not have the food for tomorrow. I only have the food for today. Here's where trust comes in. When God provided for them last Monday, and last Tuesday, and last Wednesday, and last Thursday, when God provided every single individual day up until this point, you can trust by his previous actions, you can trust by his track record that he will continue to provide every day into the future. And so for someone who has seen a great high, and you look back at your life and you see, I know that God has moved in the past, so I know that he's going to move in the future. You can trust that because he has a track record of coming through on his promises and enacting his plans, which, by the way, are good plans.
Plans to prosper you and
Not
give
to
you
harm
a future and a hope.
Hope.
Back to the hope.
But I think that there are also some people who they look back at their life and they don't see a faithful God. And they don't see a God that's provided for them. They don't see a God that has blessed them. And so they look back and they say, like where has God been? And that's the tricky part.
Yeah.
The Israelites spent a long time in captivity in Egypt. A lot of years where they didn't know where God was. But their time in Egypt, heard a preacher say, it was not a setback, it was a setup for what God wanted to do and the deliverance that he was about to bring. Someone listening to this podcast, you might be in your Egypt right now, and I got good news. I know a God who can deliver people from their captivity. Mm-hmm. And I think I touched on that in the sermon.
You
a little
did.
Bit as well.
I'm like, I remember that. That was so good. Oh, I couldn't find it. Well, you did talk about it.
I can elaborate on it.
Oh, I think it's on the other page. You can always edit this clipper.
No, we're keeping this in.
Is there editing to this video?
Nope, zero editing whatsoever.
Well,
none.
We're going to be here for a while.
I'm leaving this in.
I'm done.
I can just elaborate on it. You're done? I can just
I
elaborate
found it!
Yes.
Guys, the breakthrough moment has come.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so it says...
The only editing will be sound effects.
Oh, boy. Bow, bow, bow.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so Jesus, get this, can deliver us out of our own little Egypt. He can deliver us from depression. He can deliver us from anxiety. He can deliver us from this addiction. He can deliver us from our worries. He can deliver us from anything that unravels us to the point where we lose hope in God. Because you think back to the Israelites. Yeah, that was a lot of years being in captivity. And they might have wondered where their next meal was, right? But in the end, who reigned above it all? And that was God. So, would you like to elaborate on that?
Give God time to make a track record. Because for me, I was at a point where I looked at the future and I didn't think that anything good was going to come. But I trusted in God and something eventually did. I was just talking to someone recently and they just, it was all just kind of like falling apart on them. And they were just like, I just don't know what's going on. And I really don't know where God is in this. And I said, I feel like God is just telling me to tell you that he's telling you right now, trust me. And I'm so confident. Because every time I've seen it in my life, where everything seems to be falling apart, that's usually when God gets to work. And so there's probably someone watching this. Maybe it's just us in the future that we came back to this and we're at a point where it seems like
Yeah.
everything is falling apart. Sometimes it's those broken pieces that God knows just what to do with. And sometimes he's going to add a new piece or two that you didn't see coming. Sometimes he broke you so that he could take a few pieces away. That's called pruning. That's in the Bible as well. And that's not a fun process. None of it is. We don't like change.
No, we don't.
But
Hate it.
sometimes change is the vehicle that God uses to bring you from a low point of hopelessness to the plans that he has for you. And so wherever you're at, maybe you're at that point where you don't know where you're going. You don't know what the next step is. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. Maybe that's literally, maybe that's metaphorically. You're like, I need something. I need my kind of daily bread, which maybe that's just, I need someone to help me stop worrying. I need someone so that I don't feel so alone. I need whatever it might be. Like I need to get my mile time down so I can get a scholarship from this school. And you don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do in the moment, but I just want to say, trust God. Trust God. Because you look in the Bible and he has so many times where it's in those horrible moments where it just seems like nothing can work out. That's when he comes through. And I look back at my life and in those terrible moments where it seems like nothing good can possibly come of this, that's when God has come through for me. And so I just want to say to someone else who's in that season, trust God because he is working. Maybe it's in a way that you cannot see right now, but eventually you'll be able to when you are delivered from this. But you need to trust God. And sometimes that trust in God comes from a place of, I don't have anything else to trust in, and that's okay. When you've lost everything else to trust in, maybe you've lost a lot of stuff. Maybe you've lost a lot of friends. And you say, I don't have anywhere else to turn to but God. That's okay. But turn to God. Turn to God. Trust in God. And I don't want to preach and give someone that message and they're like, look, that's just not what I wanted to hear. But trust in God. Reach out to God and say, God, I need you, and watch how he comes through. And watch what he does. It might not be instant, but I promise you that he is working and you will see it.
Yeah. At church camp, it was talking about needing God, and they...
Raise your hand if you need God.
I need God, yes. The
It's unanimous.
preacher spoke and was like, here is a way that is a prayer that you can say to get more of God. And it was like, God, make me hungry and thirsty for you again. Or God, I feel so hungry for you. Help me to find ways to get back drawn to you. Fill me with your presence. Fill my cup up with you, God. Because I just need that right now. And he will. Or it's like, God, just show me you in this moment. And
Show
God
me where you
will.
are. Yeah.
God will show you. And it might be times where you didn't think he would show you. And you're like, did not expect that one, God. Or it might be times where it's like, I just needed that. You know, God can express himself in like so many ways. Like for me, how God speaks to me is, I'll like first pray to him, like, God, I'm just struggling. I don't know what to do. Just lead me to words in the Bible that can just help me through this situation. And I would just turn open my Bible and it would just like a scripture would just pop up. I would just be reading and then a key word would just pop up out of that Bible. And I'm like, oh boy.
And I said, thank goodness for that one.
It told me to wait. It's like, wait, my daughter. And I'm like, but God. And I'm like, no, wait, my daughter. And I'm like, but I don't know, God. It's like, wait, my daughter. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. You know, and it just comes to that point where you just have to be like, God, I'm laying this in your hands. I'm going to trust you because this is all I can do because I don't know who else to turn to. I'm so confused. I don't know what's going on in my life, but I am going to wait on you. And I'm going to wait on this. And once you do that, you'll find so much clarity and peace that you never felt before. And it could be from the Bible. Or many of times it's been God speaking through me. I'd be scrolling on Instagram, and then I would see this like a Bible verse or a quote
Or a TikTok preacher.
or a TikTok preacher that would
Named
talk about Jared B. Bald. Jared B.
Close enough.
Bald.
No, it's okay. I'm not bald, but okay.
All right. Anyways, but it'll be like the same message is being preached in so many ways, and then it'll be like my accountability partner friend. Hey, how are you doing? I'm like, not good. It's like, well, I think the Lord's been wanting me to share this with you. And I'm like, oh no, it's God speaking again and again and again and again. And I'm like, okay, God, I hear you now. And then so once you finally come to that realization that this is God and that he can speak in so many ways, then you just gotta like take that and run with it and just accept what God has for you. Fully surrender to God. I'm like, because like for me, I can be like such in a scheduled. I can be such like a person that just wants all the control. And recently it's been God's just like, just surrender to me and my plan and I will set your path straight. And then all that worry and anxiety and questioning and confusion went out the way. It went down the drain. I didn't have to think about it anymore because I knew, okay, God has my plans. His plans are good. I can trust him now. So when you fully surrender everything to God and trust in him and just pray those simple prayers of being filled with him, of God, just direct me on the way I should go. Of God, I surrender this to you. Give me this peace that I know you can. When you like say those things, God will do it and God will provide. You know, it might not be in a moment, but it might will. It's God's perfect timing. And that's another thing that we have to realize. It's God's timing, no one else's. So when our little, worldly brains think, oh, it's going to happen in an instant, and it doesn't, don't lose hope on that. You just got to wait through that because God's timing will come.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite lines you said is, this really spoke to me when you said, wait, my daughter. But no, but like actually, because sometimes when it seems like nothing is coming together, the call is to wait. The call is to say, the call is God saying, I'm coming. Just wait. Just hold on. Just keep going. Just take it one step, one breath at a time. I'm coming. I'm on my way. Just wait.
Sometimes that's really offensive to us because in our worldly views,
excuse you, God,
in our worldly views of being so busy,
you're gonna tell me
tell me to wait? No, God, I can't do that. What do you mean wait? I have this, and this, and this to do. What do you mean I have to wait? And so, like to us, we're like, are you serious right now? But when we do wait, then we're like, oh. Now I get it, God. Yeah, now I get it. But that word wait is...
That's a sermon right there.
It's this whole sermon and podcast in itself.
There we go.
Wait on the Lord.
Wait on the Lord. I like it.
And he will renew your strength. So wait on him. Totally not plagiarizing from a song, I know.
Do you have any more notes to cover? Or... have we reached the end?
Let's leave y'all with this. Whatever the plan is in your life that God has given you, don't forget the calling behind it. You spoke on that, and that really resonated. It says, just follow God. And in Matthew 16:24, if I don't bring my Bible in my car, poor thing, let me find it.
You came prepared.
I did. It says, Matthew 16:24. It says, oh my goodness. It says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Oh, wait, right there. Follow me. It says, if we want to be God's disciples, whether that's in the workplace or that's just living our daily lives of who we come encounter with people, whether that's at a church service, whatever it says, if you want to be my disciple, we must deny ourselves. We must let go of our comforts. We must let go of our control and leave it at the foot of Jesus. And it says, take up your cross and follow me. And I think that's...
I can't put it better myself.
I know. Can't put it better than what the Bible says.
I thought you had some good notes there too.
Well, thank you. Well, it's all coming from your sermon, so...
All right.
Well,
how you feeling?
Feel pretty good.
Feeling pretty good?
Yeah.
We finished our first episode of the podcast.
Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening and probably not watching because it is now pitch black. And next time, we might try to film earlier, but also we might not. Just because...
I like creating shadows on your face.
Maybe I could fix it in post. We're going to find out later. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving us your time. I hope that we could provide value to you in some sort of way, hopefully encourage and uplift you and bless you. I pray that God's able to speak through this podcast into whatever situation you're going through. And keep trusting in God. Wait on Him because He's coming. And in the meantime, don't forget your call to follow Him.
And if you have any questions, leave it in the comments area below. If you want to support this channel, you can give it a thumbs up and subscribe.
Oh my word, you're a pro. I haven't even told you to do this. Go ahead. Yeah.
Uplift Jared B Podcasting, right? Sorry. It's actually called Worthy because... Worthy Podcast.
And if you watched our first episode...
We'll be explaining what Worthy Podcast means to us.
Yeah. And that's going to be it.
All right.
Thanks, guys, for watching.
Thank you. Love y'all.
Peace.
We're done.
Real testing.
I want real bloopers out of this one.